Hello and welcome to the final video in our series on case study battles, and in this one we will be looking at the invasion of Iraq, which took place in 2003. So what's the context of this? Well, the war on terror began following the terrorist attacks of 9/11, 11th of September 2001. Britain and the US claimed that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and that he posed a threat to global security. Now, unlike earlier battles like the Somme, this isn't a total war requiring mass mobilization of society. It's a more limited conflict. It involves a coalition of professional armed forces. And actually, the invasion phase of this battle is relatively short. It only lasts a few weeks. And that's a reflection of the speed and the mobility of modern warfare. So, the two sides. The composition of the forces in Iraq shows a really significant change from earlier wars, even as relatively recently as the Somme. British troops in Iraq are professional volunteers. They're not conscripts. They're not mass citizen armies. Soldiers are now highly trained specialists. We have infantrymen still, but we have tank crews, engineers, we have intelligence units. It's much more sophisticated. The leadership as well is more professional, more bureaucratic. There's a sophisticated command structure, and the British have a highly advanced army. The Iraqis, by contrast, are reliant on conscription. There's quite low morale. They don't really have anywhere near the technological advantages of the coalition, the British and American troops. What about the weapons then? Well, this perhaps showcases the really significant change in the modern era best. We have advanced technological change. We've got precision-guided weapons like missiles. We've got UAVs like in the picture there. These allow coalition forces to target key infrastructure and military units with minimal direct engagement without having boots on the ground until later in the conflict. Satellite communication and GPS, other inventions in the modern era, mean commanders have access to real-time information, and that's going to provide a dramatic contrast really with the confusion you see at the Somme or at the Balaclava. Technology reduces the need for mass infantry assaults, which is another shift away from the industrial warfare of the earlier 20th century. Weapons that we associate with war today, tanks, aircraft, missiles, drones, are all in use at Iraq. So, what are some of the key moments that we need to be aware of during the invasion of Iraq? Well, the invasion focuses on speed, coordination, and overwhelming force. It starts with a shock and awe campaign that aims to destroy Iraqi morale, aims to decapitate the leadership capacity quickly. You would have seen images like this on the TV, as I remember watching, of Baghdad undergoing heavy bombing and missile strikes. So coalition commanders are prioritizing then rapid movement rather than prolonged battles, very different to the attritional conflict at the Somme. Iraqi command structures collapse really quickly, rapidly, showing the effectiveness of that modern command, control and communication systems. And the Iraqi military is quite rapidly defeated. So, militarily, the invasion was a success. That the coalition forces did remove Saddam Hussein from power. However, Iraq has become famous or arguably infamous as a conflict because it shows that winning battles does not necessarily guarantee long-term success. So whilst the invasion phase was really swift, the occupation that followed led to prolonged instability. we see insurgency, we see guerrilla warfare, almost street by street, hand to hand fighting breaking out. As law and order breaks down in Iraq, a number of groups vie for control. Warfare becomes close and it becomes particularly brutal. We see roadside weapons like IEDs, improvised explosive devices. We even see suicide bombers being used in this insurgency. And actually, at this point, the Allied casualties rise significantly. And the difficulty really is that for all these modern high-tech weapons that we've discussed that achieved a decisive defeat of Saddam Hussein and his regime, actually, it's still a difficult thing to truly win a war. So, what about how to use this in your exam? Well, the modern era is a time of massive change, and compared to the Somme, the invasion of Iraq really represents a pretty fundamental change in the nature of warfare. As we said, there's no mass conscription like you see at the Somme. There's no mobilization of the entire population. It doesn't require women working in factories and all those things we talked about with the Somme. Technology has replaced manpower as the decisive factor, and that reduces the need for large-scale infantry assaults. We don't see the going over the top type mass infantry charge that we see at the Somme. Leadership now is operating even further back, further away from the front line. There's the digital communication satellite GPS that allows leaders to be further back and away rather than physical presence. And precision weapons, at least in this first stage, do reduce civilian casualties compared to, say, in the First and Second World Wars. They do not, unfortunately, eliminate them entirely, particularly with the guerrilla warfare and insurgency that follows the initial stage. What about continuities? Well, despite the technological advances, there are some continuities when it comes to warfare in Iraq. The firepower of the army remains the decisive factor in battle, because while the weapons have changed from the Vickers machine guns at the Somme to precision-guided missiles in Iraq, success is still dependent on how well you deliver that overwhelming firepower against the enemy. There is also some composition of the armies showing continuity. Armed forces are still highly structured, they're still hierarchical. The officers might be different, they might not necessarily be drawn from the higher levels of society anymore, but the importance of leadership and the importance of that chain of command remains. And although modern armies are smaller and professional in comparison to previous periods, they're still organised around that discipline, that rank, that obedience, and the leadership is continuing to operate in a similar way to at the Somme, in that they are a distance from the fighting. So, while methods of warfare arguably have changed, there's many principles that have continued to be the same. And in particular, we could point to the civilian casualties. Civilians continue to be affected by war. Modern weapons can be used to limit civilian casualties, but ultimately there is only so much precision they can provide, and civilians continue to face severe consequences of warfare. So, that is the end of this video and indeed this series. I hope they've been helpful. I'm sure I will be back with other videos in the future to help your revision. Thank you for watching.